Now. All right, guys, we are back. Believe it or not, this is week 4 of our special Black History Month Healing Members Workshops, where we're doing a deep dive on wellness resilience. We're talking about what it means to build resilience and, frankly, how to build resilience that is particularly useful to Black folks. And so we're digging into the social science and the biophysiology and just understanding the role that structural racism and interpersonal racism play in our health and illness, and then figure out exactly how we can counteract those effects. So the last few weeks, what we've talked about primarily is that this effect is largely inflammatory, pro-inflammatory, right? And so what we've discovered is that most of the activities, the daily habits that can build resilience for us need to focus on anti-inflammatory or need to be anti-inflammatory in nature, right? They need to focus on how to cut chronic inflammation, which we're at increased risk for developing by nature of being exposed to the chronic social adversity or chronic social threat that is structural racism. So today we're talking about, and all of this week really, we're talking about how using movement, how exercise is one of those anti-inflammatory superpowers. So I'm gonna really quickly give you an overview, and I'll ask you all to unmute yourselves here. Hi, everybody, because I want to make sure that for those of you who can see the screen and for those of you who can't, you're getting all of your questions answered. So I'm just going to describe the picture that's on the screen for the folks who are calling in. And basically, I've got a picture of a muscle cell. And the muscle cell has a bunch of arrows going out from it to a number of different organs throughout the body. And what those arrows symbolize is that muscles actually produce these really powerful substances that communicate with other organs in our body. This research has evolved over the last decade. We've understood the way that muscles secrete substances to affect our blood vessels and to help us heal our blood vessels, so prevent atherosclerosis or the sort of clogging that can cause heart attacks. We know that there is some effect to the brain and a reduction of neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's that's associated with greater levels of activity, right? And so they've actually been able to tie the activity of muscles to the release of these substances, and then farther down the line to the reduction of neurodegenerative diseases. And we also know that these substances speak to or communicate with the immune system. And so they have an anti-inflammatory effect. And so that's what you see in this bottom right-hand corner, for those of you who can see the screen, where the arrow leads to this squiggly thing that has the word macrophage written under it. And you see that these substances, these inflammatory substances called cytokines, are decreased, and less inflammatory substances or anti-inflammatory substances, also called cytokines, it can get kind of confusing, are increased. And so there's this growing body of research, and I've cited the link to the study here, but I will, as usual, cite the entire citation or the entire reference in the caption for this video, so you can feel free to look it up. Now stop sharing my screen here. So this growing body of research has actually found that there are substances released from muscles with activity that are considered myokines. And this term myokines refers to myo from the muscle and kine, a substance that speaks to other organs and specifically affects the immune system. And so it's really incredible to learn about the anti-inflammatory effects of movement. All right, I'm going to pause there. Any questions?
No, I don't have any questions, Dr. Wu.
No. Okay. All right. Minister Ann, thanks, no questions. And I see Bridget shaking her head, no questions, perfect. So I'm gonna move on here. I'm gonna share my screen again because what we'll do together is actually an exercise. So a survey called IPAC that helps us unpack exactly how much time we're spending sitting, how much time we're spending at various levels of activity throughout the week. And the reason that's important is because of what we just said, right? The movement of our muscles, the use of our muscles releases these anti-inflammatory myokines, which do all sorts of amazing things, but also reduce the level of inflammation in our bodies, which is something that we really need, like our community specifically needs. And then the take home here is that a number of studies have shown just 20 minutes of moderate activity, 20 minutes of walking on a treadmill is enough to release myokines and reveal a resultant decrease in inflammatory markers. So 20 minutes on a treadmill, 20 minutes of moderate activity might be all that you need. 20 minutes on a treadmill is the equivalent of commuting to the bus station or the train station if you commute to work, right? Walking. It might mean showing up a little bit early to an appointment that you have to drive to, and then just like walking around the block a couple of times to get that exercise in, to get that anti-inflammatory benefit. So we're not talking about you having to be a bodybuilder or do some sort of Olympic level activity to be healthy and get this anti-inflammatory benefit. It's really just how do you pack your day with as much activity as possible? And that activity can be super casual. So hang tight here. I'm going to share my screen. And again, any questions, any thoughts, go ahead and chime in. Feel free. Okay, great. So what you should see on your screen is this PDF. At the top, it should say International Physical Activity Questionnaire. Okay. And so I think Bridget should be able to see that. And then Minister Ann, you're calling in, so you can't see that. So what I'm going to do is, Minister Ann, do you have a pen or pencil and paper?
I do.
Good. Okay. So I'm going to read off the questions, and then I'll read off the possible answers, and you just sort of write down the answers. There are only 7 questions here, so there's not too much writing that you'll have to do. And then, Minister Ann, what we've been doing these last few weeks is we've been sharing within this workshop. So I want you to know this is a safe space. We don't leave this workshop and talk about anything that we discussed here. However, these sessions are being recorded, right? So if there's any sort of personal information that you don't want people coming behind us, you don't want our other group members to hear, feel free to keep that to yourself. And there's absolutely no judgment if you decide not to share anything at all. But I'm going to go ahead and share my answers. You're very welcome. Okay. Ready, Bridget? Okay.
Yes.
So this comes with a sort of a preface, and it reads, think about all the vigorous activities that you did in the last 7 days. Vigorous activities refer to activities that take hard physical effort and make you breathe much harder than normal. Think only about those physical activities that you did for at least 10 minutes at a time, okay? So then the first question is, during the last 7 days, on how many days did you do vigorous physical activities like heavy lifting, digging, aerobics, or fast bicycling? How many days per week did you do vigorous physical activities for at least 10 minutes? And that's over the last 7 days. So going back to last, let's say Thursday.
Oh, can we say out loud?
Oh yeah, you want to go ahead?
Oh yeah, I'd say probably for 10 minutes continuous, I'd say 5 days in the last week.
Okay, nice.
At
That's
least
actually
10
what
minutes.
I got too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a big fat 0.
Yeah, that's okay. That is definitely
0.
okay. And thank you for sharing. So, Minister
welcome.
Ann, what you're going to do is sit out this second question. It says if you scored 0, then you're going to skip to question 3. But
Okay.
I'm going to read question 2 first. Okay. So you just put your pen and pencil
Okay.
down for this one. So, Bridget,
Okay.
question 2 is how many time, or I can't read. Question 2 is how much time did you usually spend doing vigorous physical activities on one of those days? Any one of those days, how much time did you spend? They want hours and they want minutes.
So on one day, I spent probably 4 hours of continuous nonstop activity.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Nonstop, literally nonstop.
And the thing is, so that's pretty amazing. I assume that that's probably one of your highest activity days.
Oh
but
my
even
God,
if it
that is not
wasn't,
typical. Typical would be usually 1 hour of
okay.
vigorous physical activity, 1 hour, and the least would be 20 minutes.
So I think they want, it says how much time did you usually spend? So I think they want a bit of an average, even if that average is a little bit higher for you this week.
I would say probably on average of vigorous activity, I would say.
And you can add up each segment of vigorous activity.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of doing.
Yeah.
And taking it in half. I would say 1 hour and 30 minutes per day on average.
Okay. I
of those
mean,
5 days.
I'm going with about 1 hour because most of this time I've been at the gym, and now that there's tons of snow on the ground, I drive to the gym, and my parking is only free if I leave within 1 hour. So I'm not working out for longer than an hour. That's how I know. That's my timing. Okay, and then it's the reality. I'm not paying $3 for parking. Number 3, okay, Minister Ann, this is where you pick your pencil back up because you're also answering this question. So are you, Bridget. This comes with a preface. Think about all the moderate activities you did in the last 7 days. Moderate activities refer to activities that take moderate physical effort and make you breathe somewhat harder than normal. Think only about those physical activities that you did for at least 10 minutes at a time. And the question is, during the last 7 days, on how many days did you do moderate physical activities like carrying light loads, bicycling at a regular pace, or doubles tennis? it says do not include walking. I'm kind of iffy on that one. So they want to know how many days per week did you do the moderate activity for at least 10 straight minutes?
I'd say all 5 days.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I'm on the iffy one because
Yeah.
it would be 3. It would be 3 or 4 days for me, but it's the walking. That's basically what I do, walk.
Okay. So Bridget went with 5 days. I'm going with 3 actually. And then Minister Ann, how many days did you say would be your walking if we included it?
Well, it would be at least 4 days.
Okay, that's wonderful. That is really great. All right. So now we're going to go to 4. Well, you know, I got a follow-up question before we skip. So Minister Ann, how hard were you walking? Like, how hard was it for you to breathe while you walked? Were you just really casually strolling, or were you actually getting out of breath because you were kind of walking
Well,
with a mission?
I wouldn't say that I was getting out of breath, but it was vigorous. I wasn't out of breath, but my breathing was a little labored.
Okay. All right. And we can come back to that later. I'm so glad that you're sharing this with us because this brings up a really important point about how we measure the intensity of exercise and the fact that, you know, we're all different and we all come from different fitness backgrounds. And so walking, according to this exercise, right, according to this survey, is not a moderate intensity activity, but for some people it is. And there's certainly a way to walk quickly enough to get really winded and to have sore muscles. And so why wouldn't we call that moderate?
And with a
intensity?
backpack.
And right, you had weight. I'm giving you this 4 days for number 3. We're gonna include that. Okay. So then the next question is number 4. And that's how much time did you usually spend doing moderate physical activities on one of those days? So it's worded weirdly, but again, they're asking for the average. On average, how much time did you spend doing these moderate physical activities? And I think they will let you add up the different segments, right? So what do you guys?
The different.
Yeah, so I think what they're saying is it's worded kind of oddly, but I think what they're saying is if on average you walked 3 times a day and each time you walked for at least 10 minutes a day, about 10 minutes, right? Let's say you're like going back and forth from the store, right? And so you're walking 10 minutes to the store and back. And let's say 4 times a day, because you're going to the store 2 times a day for whatever reason. I think you're able to add up those 40 minutes, those 4 times 10-minute segments of walking.
Okay.
And you would say that on average, you spent 40 minutes a day doing that moderate activity.
Okay.
I would say, I think my moderate activities were mainly like cleaning around the house.
I find it odd to believe that cleaning around the house would be more strenuous than walking.
I completely agree with you. Yeah. So, I mean, I said cleaning, but you know what? I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because that's not really considered moderate. I'm thinking about cleaning where I'm carrying light loads. So, you know, if you're carrying water back and forth or boxes up and down floors, you know,
The
but I
vacuum
completely
cleaner,
agree.
up and down the stairs.
Using a heavy vacuum cleaner. So that's the thing, right? I completely agree with you, Minister Ann, that I think if your walking is of significant enough intensity to make you winded, that should be considered a moderate activity, just like carrying light loads, carrying crates up and down the stairs. I completely agree with you. That's why we're counting your 4 days of walking. And so now we're going to try to figure out about how many hours and minutes on average did we each spend doing that moderate activity each of the days that we did it. And I'm talking my way through it, but I think maybe I'd give myself about an hour each of those days. So I said 3 days, and I'm going to go with on average about an hour.
Yeah, I do an hour too.
Okay. And I just want to point,
I was going to say about 45 minutes.
That's wonderful. Okay. And I was going to say, Bridget, that I know you do a lot of cycling. And so one of the things I was going to point out about this questionnaire is that it also considers cycling at a regular pace to be moderate physical activity. But I know that your particular cycling is really high intensity, right? Doing your Peloton.
Right.
So again, under this question number 1, they counted fast bicycling as one of those high intensity activities.
Okay.
And we do know that fast bicycling, right, whether you're cycling quickly or at a regular pace, is somewhat subjective and somewhat determined on just how hard it is for you to move those pedals. So just to sort of round home the point we keep coming back to, that there is a bit of subjectivity in terms of determining our intensity of exercise. So we've got our number 4 answers. We're going to move on to number 5. And now they ask really specifically about walking. Think about the time you spent walking in the last 7 days. This includes at work and at home, walking to travel from place to place, and any other walking that you have done solely for recreation, sport, exercise, or leisure. And so during the last 7 days, on how many days did you walk for at least 10 minutes at a time? I'm going to say 0. In this snow, I really haven't been walking. What do you guys think?
Yeah, continuously for 10 minutes? No. I mean, walking all the time, up the stairs, at work, at home, but never for 10 minutes straight.
Right. That really suggests like travel. You walk for 10 minutes straight when you're traveling someplace, or just, you know, walking around the block for recreation. And so then, Minister Ann, this is where they would like for you to include your walking of 4 days. And then your answer. Sorry, what's that?
You mean the total amount for the whole week? The total number of times I walked 10 minutes? Or just...
Yeah, just the days.
I'm not clear on what you're saying.
How many days in the last week did you walk for at least 10 minutes at a time? So you answered that earlier, right?
Okay, yeah, 4 days, right.
4 days. And then you said that on average, because this is our next question, number 6, on average, you spend about 45 minutes a day walking.
Right.
And then the last question is about the time you spent sitting So,
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
I know, right? I'm nervous. The last question is about the time you spent sitting on weekdays during the last 7 days. And now they're only asking about weekdays.
Okay.
Include time spent at work, at home, while doing coursework, and during leisure time.
Wow.
This may include time spent sitting at a desk, visiting friends, reading, or sitting or lying down to watch television. So then the question is, during the last 7 days, how much time did you spend sitting on a weekday?
Jeez. I'm going to say that's a shame.
I know.
That's a shame. I'm going to say about 5 hours. Let's see, sitting. So yeah, about 5 hours of sitting.
Okay, I'm adding mine up because the reality is, and so I'm just gonna say, Bridget, I think yours is a lot lower than mine. And that's wonderful because I know part of your work includes getting up and moving around.
Right.
So you said 5 hours, and that's 5 hours in one day, you think?
Per day. Because
Yeah.
at work, I'm walking from room to room to room to room to room. I don't really sit. The few times that I guess I'll sit to talk to a patient, maybe, and that would be 5 or 10 minutes here, and then I have them stand up. I'm doing this and that. So if I add, yeah, maybe I would, you know what? Let's make that, I would say 7. I'll go higher and say 7. I'll add 2 hours for work, but that sitting is like 10 minutes at a time. But it's still sitting.
Yeah.
So I'd say 7. I know once I come home, I'm sitting.
Okay.
Until I fall asleep.
Just to add to one of my many critiques of this of this questionnaire is that it's just really difficult this is a difficult question to answer, but I think doing just what you did, breaking it down, trying to figure out sort of where my longest periods of sitting, and then figure out how much time those take. So come home, doing work, eating, watching TV, whatever, sitting for however many hours that is, and then sort of add up the rest of the time during the day that you're sitting. When I'm working from home, which was all last week, I am sitting anytime that I am not like at the gym or working out in my house. And so it's probably about 12 hours. Like, honestly, that's awful. Because from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed, I'm basically just sitting. No.
Sounds like me. I'm reading, writing, or there's no TV watching, but reading, writing. So I'm there 12 or 13 hours.
Whew.
Sometimes I get up early in the morning. All those things you read off are basically the reading, the writing, and did you include, you said laying down watching TV. But I don't watch TV, but and I don't nap much during the day. I sleep at night, but I don't nap much during the day.
Okay. Yeah. So
I would say 13 hours, which is not good. I really do need to walk more.
Yeah. And you know what? It's not just the walking, right? Like, first of all, we're in the same boat. So absolutely no judgment. I definitely need to, and I know better. I put this whole presentation together for you guys, and I had the nerve to sit for 12 hours a day while I was doing it. That says a lot, doesn't it? But I mean, one of the common things this is bringing up for us is just like we don't move as much as we thought, right? Or we're at least much more sedentary than we thought. You think about, if we sleep 8 hours a day, then you've got what, 16 waking hours? And I just said that, I mean,
Yeah.
I said 12 hours. So I probably really am sitting for closer to 14 or 15 hours, if I'm being honest. Because it's almost all of those waking hours. And you think about the 1 hour or so of vigorous physical activity that I'm doing most days out of the week. And the question that science has tried to answer for us is, so how beneficial is that one period of vigorous physical activity versus the 16 hours that I'm doing absolutely nothing? And so that's the question that this questionnaire aims to help answer. So the IPAC has been used for research on like cardiovascular health and all sorts of health outcomes in adults, in children from 15 and older, and then in adults all the way up to age 65. And so what's been found generally is that with higher levels of activity, right? So lower levels of sedentary behavior, lower levels of sitting, comes greater benefit. So really, there's probably more power in us focusing on sitting less than there is in our just going hard, doing some sort of, high intensity workout every day. And so how exactly do we focus on sitting less, right? It doesn't mean that you should not necessarily work out at the gym, do your 1 hour of cycling, etc.
Sure.
That has other benefits. But what are some really simple ways that we can sort of break up this sedentary time? I'm going to share my screen one more time, at least one more time, to show you some of the results from studies on sedentary activity and our health. Any other thoughts? Like, what are you just sort of thinking through how you guys can break up time sitting? What do you think?
Well, definitely, if you're sitting there, I know when I come home to sit, it's to finish work from work, finish things that I had to do at work. So I'm sitting down typing. But what I can consider is setting an alarm and maybe every 30 minutes, vigorously either jog in place for 10 minutes or walk around the house briskly for 10 minutes or go up and down my stairs for 10 minutes straight.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's exactly, I love that. Right. So you just talked about, I like to call it a dance break, but it can be just a movement break. You set your alarm every hour, maybe the last 5 minutes in the hour, last 10 minutes in the hour, your alarm goes off. You force yourself to get up and just move. Get your heart pumping, do jumping jacks, put on some music. And that helps too to break up the monotony of, cognitive work sometimes, to get up and just get the blood flowing. And then you're re-energized when you sit back down. So that's super simple. It's fun. I've got a version of that I'm going to discuss in just a second. But first, I want to show you this slide. So a meta-analysis of like 20-something studies that included 8,000 plus participants, analyzed the connection between sedentary activity during the day, so basically just sitting, and all these disease outcomes, like all this badness. And they found very close associations between each of these. So on the screen, Minister Ann, I've got the risks associated with each of these, or the risks of disease associated with being in the lowest category of activity, or in the most sedentary category, which I think you and I are in, Minister Ann. We're in the same boat there. So in this study, there were a range of different studies. They pooled the results. And so each of these studies analyzed or characterized sitting behavior in a different way. But generally, the range was that people were sitting for more than 5 hours a day or more than 11 hours a day. That was kind of like the worst possible category of activity, is that you're sitting for 11 or more hours a day. And what this study found is that for the people who were sitting for more than 11 hours a day, compared to the people who were sitting for fewer than 5 hours a day, people who were sitting more, like us, were almost twice as likely to develop type 2 diabetes, were almost twice as likely to die from a heart or blood vessel disease. So that's like heart attack or stroke. Isn't that crazy?
I was just about to say, this is really a cheery
oh, no.
thought and idea. Oh, it's horrifying.
It's kind of morbid, right?
Horrifying.
But that's just to light a fire under both of us, under all of us, is, the stakes here are not insignificant. We really are talking about ultimately affecting our risk of death, affecting our risk of getting type 2 diabetes, which ultimately leads to stroke and heart attack and other awful outcomes, chronic kidney disease and dialysis, and just awful, right? So if it's possible for us to just make some tweaks to our everyday life to minimize the amount of time that we're sitting, then why not do that? And so what they did find, I have to tell you, is that they did find this interaction coefficient. So basically, I'm going to try to explain this. But basically, at the lower end of activity, how much time you spent sitting was more important than the higher end of activity. So like, I have a higher level of vigorous physical activity, right? About an hour of vigorous physical activity a day, but then all the rest of the time I'm sitting still. So the study does suggest that the fact that I'm sitting still is a little bit less important or less determinative of my risk of type 2 diabetes and risk of death of heart disease, because I am doing this really vigorous physical activity each day. But in the cohort of people who are not doing the vigorous physical activity at high levels, the sitting makes all the difference, right? So if you're someone who is not doing these, you're not doing high intensity exercises for an hour or two a day, it becomes even more important for you to sort of undergird your health by making sure that you're at least not sitting hours upon hours every day. And the simple act of just getting up and taking that exercise break, like Bridget mentioned, setting your alarm to go off every hour, getting up and moving.
What about standing at your desk rather than sitting?
Yes. So that's another thing, right? That's another hack is, you might not want to stand for 12 hours out of the day, like reading or doing work. But if you can spend half an hour or 20 minutes out of each hour standing, or if you can spend 2 straight hours, however comfortable it is for you, standing while you do your work, you've just cut back on the sitting time. Standing actually uses our muscles. We have to activate our core to stand. We have to use our glutes and our quads, right? So that counts.
Right.
That's excellent. There's also, I think, something that's kind of like the cousin to or a version of what Bridget mentioned with the exercise break. I think of it as a snack break, right? So we're working from home in this pandemic, and we tend to sit on the couch with the laptop and have snacks right next to us. So kill 2 birds with 1 stone and just make sure the snacks are in a different room, or they're, on a table a little bit farther away. Make sure that you have to walk for the snacks. Ideally, make the snacks something, on the healthier side. But honestly, if you're going to eat potato chips, better to have the potato chips like 15 yards away than right next to you. Whatever you're eating, just make sure you have to walk for it. So that's the takeaway, guys. That's it. That's all we got.
Oh,
Let's
okay.
just
all right.
Sit less. Any other suggestions? Any other thoughts? Nope.
No.
That's perfect.
No.
All right. Well, in that case, thank you for signing on. Thanks for going through this exercise with me. I hope it was helpful. Hopefully come away not too scared, but hopefully motivated to stand more, sit less, walk as much as possible. Okay. Stay warm, guys.
Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Wu.
Stop the meeting now.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.